Ha! My wings are awesome!
You believe that your wings are so cool? Then I suggest you gaze upon the majestic wingspan of my Nivok. Amateurs.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another Remixed review. Today we're taking a look at every alternate and combination model for the year of 2004 for the BIONICLE theme. So this should be a little bit of a shorter video because this is one of the smaller years before we get into the last 3 to 4. Before we get started, just want to remind everyone that if you have any comments, critiques, questions, or remarks regarding something I messed up on, make sure either to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below or over on the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com. With that all squared away, let's get started. Let's start off small with the Metru Nui. We're going to take these three first and remix. So what we have here is the Kinloka. This is described as a rat-like Rahi, though it doesn't feel like that to me. It feels definitely a lot more scorpion-like, given it has a giant tail, which has something on the end. In this case, a Kanoka disc launcher. Regardless, I like it. It's quaint, it's not overly complex. It works. The color scheme leaves a little to be desired. It's red and green and brown. It works. I'm not complaining too much, but it isn't one of my favorites. And yes, before anyone says anything, the eye color is correct, per the instructions. However, most CGI will show light green eyes instead of the red. Story-wise, the Kinloka is considered canon. So yeah, it's fine. I like it. Let's move on. And now the other three Matoran. This is a little more of a palatable color scheme just on the offset. Let's remix! So this is the Kavanika. So this has been described as a wolf-like Rahi, and I don't understand that at all. The build is actually quite nice. It's bipedal, however it doesn't have any arms, or at least none that I can figure. The torso combination is very similar to the Kinloka's tail in that it's two Metru torsos that just smush together. We see two Kanoka disc launchers, but it's never advertised as using any Kanoka. However, rest assured, they will still work. I think the head design is very cleverly executed, and while most of you are used to me complaining about blue pins or blue pin axles, in this case, I have to commend them. I think their use is actually quite cleverly done. I like how they're used on the torso to kind of force this angle that the model really wants to convey, and its use as the eyes is also really clever. So I really like that aspect. Overall, it's fun, it's quaint, and story-wise, it is considered canon. Let's go ahead and move on. Alright, let's move into the Vaki. Starting off with these three first, and remix! This thing is definitely the more disappointing of these two. I really don't like this one. It's very stiff, the articulation in the legs is incredibly poor, the arms have only the 2 points of articulation, the color scheme is not that great in my opinion. It's red, green, and black, and I feel like either the red or the green need to go. I'm just not a big fan of how this looks. All of the gray also kind of waters down the vibrancy I've come to expect. The head is passable, but it's just so gappy and almost unfinished. It just feels rushed. I don't like it. It's stiff. It's, to me, kind of ugly. I really did not like making this combo model. However, story-wise, it is considered canon. Let's move on. And now, the other three Vaki. And another new color scheme. Alright, let's remix! So this is called the Krahu, and this is definitely one I like. While the color scheme isn't that poppy, it has a lot of gray in the torso and some colors off to the sides and toward the front, I don't mind it as much. It's not as jarring as the Krenua was. It's more muted, and the colors work better with the gray in my eyes. One of the reasons I really like this model specifically is because it reminds me of the Eljay from Star Wars. You're really only going to remember that from Star Wars Attack of the Clones, in the scene that I think is the only good part about that film, the arena scene with those 3 creatures. They're basically the only thing I remember from that movie, and the only thing I actually liked about it. Regardless, I think it looks like that creature, so I associate it with that a little bit, so it's positive. So I really do like the shaping of it. It doesn't have any real functions or features, but it works. It stands on 6 legs, and you can also get it onto 4 legs instead of all 6 by raising the first 2 up, getting into kind of a more dynamic pose. So again, I really like that. Story-wise, this is also considered canon. Alright, let's move on to the Toa Metru. Starting off with these 3, including my favorite, good old Matau. Let's remix! This is what's called a Rahi. This, again, is actually canon as well. I think one of these was the predecessor to the Vaki. I believe it was this one? It was one of them. It turns into sand. That's what I remember most about it. Regardless, I built this when I was much younger, and I really liked it then, and I really like it now, barring a few concerns. First of all, color scheme. Again, I'm not super crazy about it. However, with more colors, I feel like it's more palatable. I don't really recommend doing this color scheme, but I think the layering of it is actually well done. It's very specific in how it's patterned, so I like that aspect of it. As far as the build is concerned, it's fun. I think it's mostly a solid build, combining these 3 Toa Metru. My favorite part is the tail. It's just this long, simple build, and surprisingly, it's a long tail. Not to mention, it actually holds up really well over the years. I can straighten it out and keep it off the ground. I mean, you're going to have to be a little finicky with it, and of course, it's going to be set per set. However, I like that aspect. As far as the legs are concerned, not a whole lot of articulation. However, I think that they're a cool looking design. The only axis that they move on is going to be front to back, so that's really most of the articulation you're going to get. I'm not sure why they made it so that the feet were plugged into the legs, but they did, so it is what it is. As far as a function is concerned, you can turn this gear on the back and the upper torso will move. You don't need to turn the gear, but you can. And then his arms will also move up and down, kind of like a slashing motion. That's neat. I like it. Moving on to the arms, actually, I'm not the biggest fan of them. They're basically just Matau's legs with his armor, shoulder armor smashed on the backs, and it restricts posability greatly. I don't know why they did that. It looks alright. However, again, it's a restriction. Overall, I like it. I think it's a cool look. It's a cool design. I think the build was a lot of fun, and I just enjoy it. So again, it is canon. So let's move on. Alright, the other 3 Toa Metru are here. And this, again, is a color scheme I expect to go better. Let's remix! This is the Krawa. And this is not my favorite between the 2. Unfortunately, this is one that has a really cool look. It's got a cool silhouette. However, when you actually get in there and build it, it's greatly disappointing on a variety of levels. First of all, the limbs. The back legs are actually mostly fine. They're really just Toa Metru legs with a couple of extra add-ons, so they're not too offensive. But the arms are restrictive and they look awkward. They just don't look cohesive or solid. They're just clumsy and kinda ugly. I really don't like the front limbs basically whatsoever. Onto the torso, it's also a mess. It doesn't have any sort of cohesion. The only thing that I think is kind of interesting is how Nuju's mask is shoved onto the front, but even then, I don't know why. Why his mask as opposed to any of the others? Was it just because I needed to fit a mask quota? I'm not really sure. It's just a very uneven looking torso that just looks really awkward and poorly built. It seems, again, almost rushed. As far as a function is concerned, you do have a gear on the back where you can turn it, and it's supposed to move the neck up and down, and it kinda sorta does. Which brings us to our final point, the neck and the head. The neck, I think, is well built. It's a fine design. And again, I think that the silhouette of this is really cool. Unfortunately, when you get to the head, it still looks cool, but is not a lasting design. You see, story-wise, apparently when this creature gets angry, its eyes turn red. And that's kind of a reason why it's got a blue eye and a red eye, like it's starting to get mad. Unfortunately, I can't really use that as an excuse. I'm not super big on that. I don't like the two-tone eyes. They're not super offensive to me, and it's just a personal preference, but my main issue with the head is really what should be the best part of this. It's using those weapons to comprise a part of the center of the face, and unfortunately the way that they're connected, the blades are not inclined to stay in the way the model wants them to. Unfortunately, if that loosens up a bit, the two heads or the two hand pieces pushing together, then the blades will fall forward, and it looks like they're just a beard, and it's really weird and disappointing. This unfortunately is exacerbated by the fact that the function moves the head up and down, which of course pulls on the headpiece itself and causes the blades to fall out of position. So yeah, I'm disappointed with this one. I really didn't like it. I don't recommend trying to build it. Story-wise, again, it is considered canon. Okay, one more Toa build. That's right. We're taking all 6 Toa Metru and remix! Behold, Kraka. The combination of all 6 Toa Metru presented through one of the most unusual methods. Before we get into that, I just want to shout out BIONICLE Archives, because without their help and assistance, this footage would not have been possible. They helped greatly in this, so I thank them greatly, and I recommend you head down to the description below. There's a link for the BIONICLE Archives. Go check them out. So a brief disclaimer, I did not build this. This was built by another individual. I don't actually remember who. It was built during a week in December of 2018 by somebody else. However, I got the chance to actually review it here, which was a massive time saver. So, as far as my hands-on experience, this is basically it. Additionally, I cannot vouch to the 100% accuracy of the model. However, I am confident that it is based on the description we got in the book, which is where the instructions were released, and the color picture we got in the Rahi guide. So this one is interesting. It is a full Toa combination of all 6. This is the first time we have gotten something like that. Build-wise, the legs are actually really solid. The articulation isn't that great, however, they look really good. They're a really solid looking design, so I do like that about them. The torso isn't anything remarkable. It's a Toa Metru torso with something extra, kind of like a belt slapped on, so there's nothing too great there. The limbs are fascinating. See, this is supposed to be all 6, and it represents all 6 of the Toa weapons, which I think is really cool. The different type of arms and weapons and whatnot are connected to torsos, which comprise shoulders. I think that's really cool. It shows off a great level of scale, and I really like that. As far as the weapons, I don't mind. It looks kind of neat. He's just got a huge array of weapons and stuff to use, and I think that's awesome. I like how that looks. One of my favorite parts is actually the head. I think that's a really clever design, and I like how it's pulled off. I think the only thing I'm not a big fan of is the giant unicorn horn on the top. I'm sure many would disagree with that. However, it's just a preference thing. I'm not big on that. Color scheme-wise, it was never going to be cohesive. However, I feel the fact that these are Metru colors really helps us out. It's not as jarring or bright or obnoxious. It's more of a muted color palette. And that way, to me, it's easier to accept all of these different colors on this model. So overall, I actually do like it. One of these days, I figure I'll just build it myself to get a little more time with it. But in the meantime, I like it. I liked dealing with it back then. I like looking at it now. It's kind of a neat model. And of course, I'm sure most of you know this, it is considered a canon model. Okay, we've got all the canister sets out of the way. Let's move on to the Titans. We're going to take these 2 here and remix. So here we have the Lorok. Now this is interesting in the sense that it uses 2 Titans, Nidiki and Dume and Nivak, and doesn't do as much with those as it probably should. This thing is small. It's really small. It's not much bigger than most of the other models we looked at. And to that, I feel a little almost underwhelmed. Like I expect these combinations, especially between Titans, to be large and complex and grandiose. But this isn't. Now, some people might see that as a good thing because it's easy to make. To me, it was a hassle because I had to take apart 2 Titans. And that's a lot of time to put them together into something and then take them apart. And so I expect a large return out of a large investment when it comes to these combo models. So when you ask me to take apart 2 Titans, I want basically another Titan. And I didn't get that here. That being said, the model itself is fine. The color scheme is not the best. I don't really like the addition of the bright red, but I can accept it. a lot of animals in the wild, they have bright colors, kind of ward off enemies. So that's fine. It does actually have a function. If you push this bar on the back here, the jaws open and no rubber bands are used, which I'm a huge fan of. I think the head design is actually very clever. I really like it. The wings are a bit simplistic, but that's a good thing because there's not a whole lot to them. You can pose them how you like, and you can get some poses out of this creature. It does have some articulation in the tail, so you can get into certain other poses, though there isn't a long list of them. Overall, the model is fine. I like it. I'm just really irritated because that's a lot of work to put into something that's so small and utilizes so few of both of those sets parts. And of course, once again, I'm sure you all already know this set is considered canon. Okay, it's time. We take these 3 titans from the year of 2004 and remix! Behold, everyone, Ultimate Dume. This is one of the contested largest Bionicle models ever released. Now, very briefly, some people have asked me to compare the size of Ultimate Dume to the size of Cardaz, which Cardaz currently holds the title as the largest Bionicle model. I'm not going to do that in this video. I'm not going to try and challenge the Cardaz title in the Dume video. It's going to be the other way. So I will do size comparisons when I get back to Cardaz. However, I'm not going to do it here. Now, on to the model. This is fascinating. This is what I was talking about just a moment ago. This is taking Titans and really making use of Titans. This guy is huge. I had to spend a lot of time trying to get him in one shot. So I apologize if it looks a little unclean on the screen here, but I really wanted to get this picture. The set is massive. Try and put my approximate measurement of it on screen. And build-wise, it's hit or miss. The torso is, I think, a good hit. I like the torso. I think it has a good look to it. I really like the use of these lift arms as armor. I think that's clever. The color scheme, of course, isn't that bad either. It's black and dark blue, which is a perfectly good color scheme. Moving down to the legs, however, they're very thin. They're super spindly. And unfortunately, his balance, because of that, isn't that great. This is in a time before friction adders and the kind of piston pieces that we saw in 2006. So unfortunately, he doesn't have a whole lot to keep him upright, and he's kind of top-heavy. His feet are a good base for him. It's really his ankles that are the problem. Speaking of the feet, they work, but gosh dang, do they not look great. I'm not a big fan of that design. It's just kind of awkward. It's not pleasing to me. But again, they are functional. The upper legs, however, are fine. And as far as articulation is concerned, he does have reasonable articulation in his ankles and knees. However, in the hips, you'll get him to certain extents. It's not a great amount of articulation. However, it is a serviceable amount. Moving up to his arms. Let's look at his left arm real quick. More specifically, the left hand. It's kind of a claw hand. It uses a lot of the blade pieces and it has a thumb. I think it works. It's serviceable, though it does look like a bunch of blades that are just shoved on the end of a limb. So it's not a great look, but it works. His right hand, however, is exciting, because this is more or less supposed to be a shadow hand. You'll probably remember this best from Legends of Metru Nui, the Bionicle film, as him shooting the hand out of his chest. However, here it's, of course, represented by one whole limb. I think it works. I like it. I'm not super big on the green in the center, but they don't have a whole lot of other options, so I'm fine. If anything, it actually matches a lot of Makuta's description in the film, being more of a green and red as opposed to the blue and black we're seeing here. Moving up, let's look at the wings very briefly. They are obviously quite large, making up, I would say, most of his height, or at least most of what you're immediately drawn to when it comes to how tall he is. They're all silver, which I actually appreciate in hindsight. The wings being a cohesive, singular color. The blades are used appropriately, and as far as articulation is concerned, he does have some. You can kind of fold them back to get new looks out of him, so I do appreciate that aspect. And now moving on to the head. He's got a long neck, and we're really veering off from the representation in the films here. So the head is just a Mata head that has been integrated with a large jaw design. Now, obviously enough, you can move the top half of his jaw up so it can open and close, and that's fine. It just looks a little goofy. That's all. I'm not the biggest fan of how that looks, basically whatsoever. Now, I know what most of you are probably thinking. Eljay, you gotta mention it. Okay, let's go. This combo model is completely possible just by buying the separate sets involved. The instructions are included in the individual instructions of those sets. However, this was also released as a Toys R Us exclusive in stores in its own box with a new exclusive piece as set number 10202, Ultimate Dume. Set released in 2004, contains approximately 555 pieces, and retailed for about $50. Real quick, I want to address something. Some sources say that the set came with 2 extra 4-long axle rods and the new mask. However, I'm not certain of that. I don't have a source for that, and when I was doing the part counts when I built this, you can build this model and still have additional axles from the original sets. You don't need extras for that. So I'm reasonably confident it's only the mask. And onto the mask, here it is. You take the axles and you slide it on the top where it's designated, and boom. This is a Konohi Krakan. This is apparently a special edition Krakan. And I really do not like this. I don't like it for 2 main reasons. One, it doesn't look like a Krakan. Like, you can make an argument for the one we saw with Takuta. I can see that. Obviously, it was a modified Krakan, but I get it. This bears no similarity to the Krakan. It is half of a mask, and the only way you get it onto this set is through axle rods, where it only comprises the top half of his head, because the bottom half is a giant set of jaws, which we have never seen on that character before. I don't understand. This is your grab? I don't like it. I don't like how it's implemented. I don't like how it looks. When I put it on the set, it just kind of feels like I've put a bag over his head, held it in place, and just stretched it so his face looks all goofy. Or like he's in the wind, and it's just pulled back, and just, I do not like how it looks. It makes his head taller, but it doesn't do anything to add to the appearance. It just feels like it was designed around this design, which I can almost certainly guarantee you it was. Because my entire stance on these combo sets has been, they start out as combo models, and then they decide to try and sell them as sets and entice you, maybe, with a new piece. Keep in mind, this is the last one to have an exclusive piece in it. And no, I'm not counting Ernak. We'll get onto that in the 2006 video. Overall, the mask adds nothing. The set is just the combo model. That's it. With one new piece that really doesn't add a whole lot to this figure overall. It does nothing as interesting or as discussion worthy as the Krakan from the Takuta set, and I don't think that it merits having an entirely new box just to release this with this special Krakan, which I don't think looks like a Krakan. Additionally, the way that the mask connects is cumbersome. It's awkward. You're not going to be able to use it as a normal mask, and I've seen people use it in mocks, and it's a Lego piece. You can use it for a myriad of things in a variety of circumstances, in a variety of builds. Don't get me wrong. It's just, when I think of a mask, you've got to have a connection point. There has to be something that centers it on the head of the character, and I feel like there are a lot more steps to doing that with this mask, and it's just not as easy to use as any other mask that was released. Overall, Ultimate Dume is an interesting figure. I like it and I don't like it. When I first built it, many months ago, preparing for this series, it was one of my favorites. I would even argue possibly my favorite. However, at this point, it's sunk to my maybe second least favorite. My least favorite being Takuta. Unfortunately, it's just a very tall and spindly build that has a lot of trouble staying upright. Its size is impressive at first, though I feel in a lot of instances it's quite superficial and artificial. So while it does have some pros, unfortunately there are a lot of things about this that I just really cannot get behind. And of course, I'm sure you all know this is considered canon. It is actually considered the depiction of Makuta Pterodax from BIONICLE Legends of Metru Nui. And that's it that has been the 2004 combo model and alternate model lineup. Overall, it's a smaller year, which I appreciate from the perspective of someone making this series. However, I'm also a little disappointed. We really didn't see that big push, that massive surge of models to really help inhabit the world. We've gotten them. Every model for this year is technically considered a canon model, even if it didn't have a story appearance. However, we didn't get that large variety of things that I've come to expect and anticipate and look forward to every year. I should be eating my words right about now, and I certainly will, given that next year we're really upping the amount of them, but we'll get into that in a month. I think that some of the designs were really well executed, specifically some of the Matoran combo models and the Rahi, though others were just not where they needed to be. I just don't think they were very interesting, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just because of the parts used, or because some of them were just kind of to fill a quota. And again, this year features one of the combo sets, which I don't feel deserves a set title. I just don't think it does enough to really warrant that. I also feel like its title is superficial and artificial, similar to its height. So overall, I'm a little lukewarm on the year, but that doesn't mean you have to be. Let me know what you think in the comments below or on the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com. I love hearing what everyone thinks. The comments every month are a joy to read because I get to see what people think about all of the combos and alternates released in any given year. And that's it. Another year, another month, all taken care of. So join me next month when I look over, oh gosh, it's gonna be a long month, when I look over the 2005 alternate and combination models. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you all then. Farewell.